Again, assuming I can figure out how to post this on YouTube afterwards, we'll do that. Let me just start with any specific questions regarding the exam that any of you may have.
Not right now.
Not right now. Anybody else?
For the short answer questions, like on the sheet you gave us, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. For the short answer portion, is it going to be like we can choose 2 of the 4, or is it going to be randomly assigned?
For the short answer, I'm just choosing 2 of those.
Okay.
But you know for sure one of them is going to be on there, right?
Yeah.
Because I pretty much gave that away in class. Intentional. Yeah. And the other one I will choose from the 3.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Okay, well, while you're thinking of questions, I mean, there's not a lot I can add, I think, other that we didn't talk about in class. I know some of you may have missed a couple of classes in there, but for example, the formula on the back of the study guide, and I'm pretty sure each of you has a study guide: who, what, when, where, why, significance, and relation to other events for the identifications, right? So you just want to make sure that you address as many of those questions. And I put that little formula, I think I do. Yes, I put that little formula on the exam, so you don't have to worry about that. It's on there. And just for the identifications, we'll start with that, and then talk more about the short answer questions if you want to. You just want to make sure you try to address as many of those questions as you can. The most significant, of course, being significance in relation to other events.
You mean like one of the things that we primarily want to address in the how, what, when, where, why is
Precisely.
The relation to the other events?
Exactly. That's the
Okay.
sort of formula that you want to go by. I'm try to bring up the sample midterm exam. Why is it not showing? Will it not let me bring up a Word document for some reason? A little confused on that. Sorry, I was going to bring up I have it here. I don't know if you guys have your copies with you, but when I click in the course folder, all I'm seeing are the PowerPoints. It's not bringing up let me try. Oh, okay, this might help. All files. Okay, that helps. Sorry, y'all. I'm still getting used to a lot of this stuff. I thought I clicked on it, but it's still not coming up. Let me try share. Okay, sorry. There's all kinds of technical glitches here. Share window or screen. And so I don't know why that's not coming up. All right, browse my computer here. Sorry, y'all. Try it again. Well, Andrea, I see your hand. Can y'all see the sample midterm?
Not on your screen.
No.
Damn.
But
See, it was so easy under Zoom. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andrea. I'm assuming everybody has a copy. Go ahead, Andrea.
I have a question. So, like with the how to do identifications, does that include like the photo IDs of like the one of like Gandhi?
No,
Okay.
exactly. The photo IDs, the 10 quickest, easiest points, without a doubt. And in fact, let me see if it'll let me share that. We went over them in class today, of course, but.
And that's so. What you just said, the photo IDs, the slide identification, the actual exam will have the photos, and we just.
No, I'll show it on the PowerPoint above. Now, for those taking it in class, if anyone is taking it separately with accommodations, then they will have the PowerPoint that they will show you.
Okay, and then for the other identifications, there will be 8 of the 25 and we choose 5 of them.
Precisely. Exactly.
Why did you create a difference between identifications and short answer questions when they kind of, oh, I guess a short answer is about specific stuff, but they're supposed to be about the same length, correct?
I would say the short answer questions. There we go. I think that's working. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
I don't know why it's not working for the sample midterm exam. The short answer questions are probably more either longer paragraphs or like 2 short paragraphs, I would say. So a little bit more involved from the readings. The difference primarily is that those come directly from the readings. So, and I made this point in class the other day as well. I mean, technically you've been preparing for this exam all semester, right? Which is the way exam I think is supposed to be, because for each of these options on the short answer, you've done either one of the online posts, or for Thousand Splendid Suns for today, we did a reaction piece. So that is your preparation for the exam. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
And I think that a difference there is, I would say those are meant to be short answer questions, which there's only 2 of these and they're worth 20 points each. So yeah, I would say they are meant to be a little meatier, if you will, a little longer. Think of them as at least 2 paragraphs or 2 short paragraphs or 1 long paragraph. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And do we even need to review these? You guys know these slides by now by heart, right? What is this? Which conference is this from? Which conference is this from?
Potsdam. I'm the only one with my mic unmuted. Gandhi.
Oh, no worries. And who is this?
Gandhi.
Gandhi. And what is this an image of?
Backyard furnaces.
Backyard furnaces. And what are these children running from?
Ooh, this is what I missed.
Napalm. And today we added the last one. What Afghan regime carried out public executions like this one?
Taliban.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing for now, right? Okay. All right. And go back to any specific questions regarding anything on the sample midterm you may have, or format, or any questions you have.
For the photo ID, is it gonna be like we write it out?
Yes. Yeah. There will
how
be.
How do you spell napalm?
Napalm. More or less how it sounds, right? Napalm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's the difference between napalm and like all the agent colors?
Like Agent Orange, for example. Yeah. Oh, well, that's not going to be on the exam. That sounds more like a science question, science exam. Napalm was used a lot. Agent Orange was also extensively used, as we talked about in class, and those were both defoliants, which was meant to basically kill the jungle leaves and trees and crops. So the one difference, I don't think Agent Orange caused actual physical burns. Napalm definitely did, as we saw in the famous picture that's on there, right? One of the IDs, slide IDs. Yeah, napalm was more of a burning agent. Don't think Agent Orange was.
Okay. And then the Orange Revolution on here for the ID list is referring to that in Ukraine, right?
Ukraine, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody, and I'm glad was that Nicole? I think that was Nicole, right? Yeah. I'm glad you said that. So let's do that one as an example using our lovely formula for Orange Revolution. How would you address that?
Me?
Anybody, but yeah, you, if you want to.
I'm the only one with my mic unmuted.
Apparently, that's right. You are.
Who would be Ukraine?
Okay.
What?
Yeah. Where is Ukraine, right? And,
Oh,
and by the
where?
way, those not all those questions fit in every case, right? Perfect example.
Hmm.
Orange Revolution
So,
is not so much a who; it's a where. Obviously, Ukraine. You already got that right.
who would be pro-West versus pro-Russia?
Okay, absolutely. And I would not specifically say you have to know the two Victor Y guys. Right? They wouldn't hurt, but I'm not going to tell the grading assistants to take off points if they don't get the two victors. Right? I think knowing pro-Western candidate versus pro-Russian candidate, that's more important.
Well, then what would be the two we're fighting for? That is that the one where they already did the election, but it was unfair, so they redid it? And these
Precisely.
were those protests that promoted them to redo it.
Exactly. The Orange Revolution, thus named because of the orange coloring of the Yushchenko campaign that overthrew the fraudulent first results and insisted on a second fair elections, fairer, in which he won, right? So yes, exactly.
So
What you just said.
when
Mhm.
was like November 04 to 05, the beginning of 05?
Yeah, okay, '05. Yeah, it was in 2005. And with regard to chronology, we're not going to be overly nitpicky. Mid 2000s would work just fine. But
Okay.
2005 is great, and November 2005 even better, right? But I don't expect y'all to remember exact dates. But you also don't want to be like way off in the chronology. You want to at least be in the ballpark. Mid 2000s would work just fine. 2000s would even work, honestly.
Okay, and then the why would be they were fighting for a fair election because
Yeah.
what was it, the pro-West that initially, that was the one that the US person was recorded saying like, we want this person to win?
Uh, I'm not sure what you might be mixing that up with the infamous Kuchma Gate, where he was recorded saying he wanted a journalist killed.
Oh,
So it's a totally different thing. That was the pro-Russian, one of the pro-Russian guys, although he was not up for election. He was the incumbent, but he was at the second end of his two-term limit. So Yanukovych was his choice as successor, and the pro-Russian side, altered the results to make it seem as if Yanukovych had won, and that's what sparked the whole Orange Revolution.
but then when they went back and redid it, Yushchenko, the Western one,
Yushchenko
won.
won, exactly.
Okay.
The pro-Western candidate won. And as far as, to finish that out, significance and relation to other events, we just talked a little bit about how he did. Did he prove to be a great president, Yushchenko, who won the second election and came to power thanks to the Orange Revolution?
No, but the significance is that it was like, aside from independence, it was the first big political attempt to step away from Russia.
There you go. Okay. Or yeah, I would accept that for sure. Yeah. And yeah, it was a step away from Russia, and it was unfortunately did not work out very well because he proved to be a terrible president. And in fact, the end to that one would be, I think, and 5 years later, the pro-Russian candidate Yanukovych actually wins the 2010 elections. So he
But
does wind up in power.
the current, I'm kind of peeking back and forth in notes too. This
Okay.
2005 election thing is not considered to be what sparked the modern conflict. It's up
No,
to 2013-14.
exactly.
So there really isn't necessarily a relation to other events aside from like the step away from Russia.
the step away from Russia. I would add to that, and that's a very perceptive question, Nicole. Thank you for asking that. There's a connection, I would say, which is that the pro-West president who won as a result of the Orange Revolution, Yushchenko, proved to be such a disappointment and so bad that it opened the door for the return of the pro-Russia candidate who won in 2010, Yanukovych, which in turn, his corruption and his policies is what led to the current conflict. Does that make sense?
What about like his corruption? Like, was he like setting the way for, because if you look on those maps, it's a very divided line of where the
Yes.
native language is Russian and where it's Ukrainian, and
Ukrainian, very
did
divided.
he kind of set that up? Like, was it
He
kind of
didn't
like a puppet state like Belarus?
He was, Ukraine during his tenure was essentially a Russian puppet state. Yes, definitely. And he essentially, it became, it followed Russia very closely. And indeed, that's what sparked the current conflict.
Okay.
Was him rejecting the aid from Europe, from the EU, in favor of aid from Russia. And that's led to protests, which he then cracked down on, which then led to even more protests, which basically led to where we're at now.
Was the aid like twisted, like the post World War II or World War I aid that the West provided, so the Soviets had to turn down because of how like under the thumb it would have put them? Was this
Yeah.
aid like that, or was there
It
no
was
reason
very
to
similar
do
to
that?
that. Sure. Yeah, that's again a
Wait.
good question. You're talking about the Marshall Plan in particular, which we discussed, early on. And yes, it would have required Ukraine to carry out certain specific reforms that would have been very negative to average Ukrainians. And it also would have damaged, in particular, you were talking about that electoral map and how divided it was. It would have had a particularly devastating impact on the southeastern Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine that are more closely integrated to Russian trade and things like that. So the short answer is yes, it would have been devastating.
A bad impact if from the Russian aid or the Western aid?
The Western aid would have had those negative impacts. Russian aid would, it had stipulations as well, but for Yanukovych, his base was the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine. They are the one, that's the area that elected him. And so he was playing to that base by rejecting the EU aid and accepting the Russian aid.
Why were people upset then that he turned it down if the aid had so many stipulations that were negative?
Very good question. Again, I mean, the short answer to that is, again, the divided nature of Ukraine. Most Ukrainians in Ukraine, or most native Ukrainian speakers, look to Europe, look to the EU. They considered Ukraine a European country first and foremost. That's why they were so offended and rejected the decision by Yanukovych to turn down the EU aid, because they saw that as a way for even despite some of the restrictions that it would have caused them. And eventually they do wind up taking that package, right, after Yanukovych is ousted in 2014. And they saw it as a more Western European path, which is what the majority of the Ukrainian speaking population would prefer. Again, keep asking, but does that make sense?
Yeah. Is it still, it's not still that divided today, like amongst the population, is it?
Well, that's a tough one, because the answer to that I think would be yes and no, depending on where you're at, because so much of that Russian speaking part, that southeastern part of Ukraine, is now actually occupied by Russia. And in fact, Russia considers it to be part of Russia. And that one of the things that the Russians have been doing in that territory, which is a rather lengthy, it's about about 22%, I think, of Ukraine, including Crimea, of Ukrainian territory, is now occupied by Russia. And one of the things that they make the Ukrainians that are in that area agree to accept Russian citizenship, which, of course, if you accept Russian citizenship, then that means you're young sons, in some cases daughters, might be conscripted into the military to go fight against the Ukrainian army. So most Ukrainians in those areas, rather than do that, are leaving. And the Russians, Russian population there is therefore increasing. It's just becoming it's as divided as ever now because so much of it is occupied by Russia.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a disaster. And by the way, that's way more detail than you need for the exam, but hopefully instructive nonetheless. Right? And the Orange Revolution is a good one, a good example. Because we talked about it, but I don't know if we, it was good to review that one. And I'm happy to review any of the other ones people are having questions or uncertain about. Anyone?
If nobody else has anything, I'll ask another one because I
Go right
missed
ahead.
the last 2 days.
Certainly, yeah.
What was the Tet Offensive?
The Tet Offensive, which we talked about on Monday, was it? Yeah, Monday.
Yeah, I've been gone the last 2 classes.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I remembered to post those PowerPoints. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And basically, a Tet Offensive 1968, early 68, February 68, and it was an offensive by the Viet Cong in an attempt to, militarily at least, their goal was to overthrow first of all, the Wat was a military offensive on Tet, which is the Buddhist New Year. The Win is late 60s, 1968. The Where is Vietnam War. And the why or significance is that the Viet Cong, by initiating this offensive, were trying to take power in the South and reunify the country under communist control. They were hoping to spark a popular rebellion and to oust the South Vietnamese government and the Americans supporting the South Vietnamese government. Of course, militarily, it failed. But, and here is a key part of the significance, and this is what we talked about on Monday, from a public relations point of view, it was hugely successful back in the United States, because it showed that, contrary to what U.S. leaders had been saying up to that point and for some time, we're winning the war, it's just a matter of time, just have patience. The Tet Offensive clearly showed that things are not going as well as they're telling us. Right?
Okay, cool.
And it was a boost to the anti-war movement back in the United States.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other specific examples, anyone? Or we could, turn to some of the short answer questions. I think, sure one of them is going to be on that, right, Andrea?
Yeah, I have a question about like the Kim Il Sung.
Yeah, Kim Il Sung as one of the sort of key founders of North Korea. So he's in there, in the late 40s or during the during the period of the early Cold War when the country is being divided in the early stages, I should say, right? And there, I think you would want to focus on the fact that you had, within the Cold War context. Let's do the little formula again here, right? Who, what, when. Who is Kim Il Sung? That's pretty straightforward. What is leader of South Korea? Excuse me, of North Korea. Right? I'm getting them mixed up myself here. That's not a good sign. As the Democratic Republic of North Korea, the communist part of Korea, right? And he sets up a very pro-Soviet communist regime there. And then that's another case where, as I mentioned in class and went over in some detail, in fact, that these overlap a lot. Like, you could not answer Kim Il Sung without mentioning the Korean War. I think it would also, in answering the Korean War, it might be helpful to mention Kim Il-sung. Wouldn't be as quite as required, I guess, but doing it this way, Kim Il-sung, of course, one of the major things that he launches is the invasion of North Korea in summer of 1950.
South Korea?
Yeah, he's the leader of North Korea, and he launches did I get him mixed up again? Sorry. Yeah. He launches the invasion of South Korea to try and reunify the country under communist control with him as obviously the leader. So I think for him, the main significance is precisely that. He launches the Korean War.
Okay, thank
does
you.
That help, Andrea? Yeah?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And as I mentioned in class, by the way, Korean War will be one of the options on the exam. And so I will go ahead and tell you, in fact, that Kim Il-sung will not be one of the options. It was useful to review that with our formula in mind, but that will not be one of the 8 choices, just so you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is pushing it, but could we play a game?
Maybe.
Okay.
What's the game?
I'm casually going to read the list, not for your benefit, for everybody else's. And if it's on there, you're just going to tug on your ear.
Oh, my God. I'm going to tug on my ear?
It could be a different signal. You just have to vocalize that, hey, I'm going to brush my hair. Not why, but.
I'm not sure we could go quite that far, but that's one reason, as a reward for folks who have come to class, that I've been giving a lot of these in class, right?
Well, and this sample midterm thingy is awesome too, by the way. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Can we briefly just kind of go through the main points of the short answer questions?
Yeah, that's where I think we were heading. And again, hopefully some of you will know, you'll know from what we talked about in class, several of the 8 that will be on there. Maybe not all 8 of them, but I think a good number of them from class attendance. For the short answer, and thank you for transitioning us to that, I give you sort of a how-to at the very end of the sample exam, which is, define the topic. That is, if 1,000 Splendid Suns is going to be on there, right? So you set that up with Afghanistan, give us a chronology. It starts in the early 70s and lasts right up until really the early 2000s. So it's a 30-year span, basically. And 1 to 2 sentences of that sort of background about not just the novel itself, but where it's set, Afghanistan, and the political history of Afghanistan based on these 2 women characters, Miriam and Layla. And then you want to get into a little bit of the specifics, as always. And I know I've used this a lot in class and in grading. I keep telling them, and I'm doing it as well in the pieces that I'm grading. Make sure you bring in specific examples from the readings to illustrate the points that you're making. That's true of this as well. Now, I don't expect you to memorize exact quotes from the novel, right? But there's so many, specific things that you can kind of generalize, like Miriam's mom, Nana, telling her, a man's accusing finger always finds a woman. I'm paraphrasing myself. I don't know if that's a direct quote, but it's something along those lines, right? You definitely want to, as much as possible, try to remember specific things that happened in the novel. And the last part of that simply being showing the broader implications and significance from that. What does this novel tell us about the treatment of women in Afghanistan over this long span, especially during the Taliban rule when it's at its worst, but even before that, it wasn't wonderful, right? There were better stages, and ironically, the communist period was better, a lot better than the Taliban period that came after. But you want to, I think, reflect on the gender aspect, because that's the main theme of the novel, and how it portrays changes in the gender situation for women over this long span of Afghan history, bringing in specific examples.
Could you say that one more time, please?
Oh, golly, all of that?
No. Just
That last
the
part?
end
Okay, yes.
about the gender divide and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, gender is clearly the main theme of this novel, right? Just as an aside, he was criticized for his first novel, which is brilliant, Kite Runner, because it's almost exclusively about men. There are a few female characters, but it's mostly about men. So then what does he do? He writes a second novel, this one, A Thousand Splendid Suns, that is mostly about women. I mean, obviously men play a pivotal role, Rashid in particular. But the main theme of this novel is clearly gender relations. And so I think you want to point that out in the experiences of these two main female characters, Miriam and Layla. And by the way, it always helps when you name names. You can't always necessarily remember the names, but you know, when you can, that's a plus. And the experiences that they encountered over well, of course, Miriam is older, so she's at the beginning to the end, and when it, of course, ends badly for her. But Layla comes in a bit later. But over the course of this 30-year period, the experiences that these women underwent and the changes and how it got much worse under Taliban rule. Did that help, Nicole? I feel like I was just
Yes.
rambling even more on that one. Sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other specific questions, anyone, with regard to any of the other short answer questions or any of the other identifications? I think you will find once you get in there, you'll probably do a lot better than you. I mean, I know there's a certain anxiety. I do not mean for these to cause anxiety. But with exams, it's almost inevitable, right, to have a certain degree of anxiety. But on the whole, students, like, I'm recognizing names, and you guys are always in class for the most part, and I think that's a big plus, and you'll do just fine. Nicole, did you have a?
Is the final exam going to cover the first half of the semester too, or just the last?
No, the final exam, well, the in-class part of the final exam is not cumulative at all. It just covers from where we'll pick up next Wednesday, I guess, which is Iran to the end, which is Cuba. But there is the one difference. There is a take-home exam with the final exam. The questions are at the end of the syllabus, by the way, if you want to get a heads up on it, just to take a look and see, so you're thinking about it as you go. And that part is meant to be at least partly, somewhat cumulative. But the end part of the exam is not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, anyone? Don't be shy. Don't hesitate. Yeah, Andrea?
How long should our short answer responses be?
I would guesstimate here. I'm just got some blue books here. I've got some of each size, right? Let me look back at. I would think that about, okay, here's someone with one of the. Can y'all see these? This is one of the smaller blue books. This is from students from the past, and this particular student has responded and got very high marks, by the way, for this short answer question, which is, I don't know how well you can see that. It's basically one page for the small blue book, right? And it's one paragraph. So as I was saying earlier, I would say the short answer questions, you want to think about those in terms of either one long paragraph or two shorter paragraphs. And different students write different size, so there's no one size fits all, right? You can never standardize like that. But essentially, I think this student got it right, which is for the smaller blue books, you want to go basically one page.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. It's okay if you go a page and a half too, right? Even 2 pages, especially in the smaller ones. All right. Are there any other questions, anyone? Okay. Well, I am going to try to save this. I'm looking right now. I'm a little concerned that it's because I came on very early. I was worried it might not work. And it seems to have recorded the whole thing. So there's going to be like 40 minutes of me just sitting here reading on my computer, which is a disaster if that's the case. So I'm going to try to fix that and submit this for, put this on YouTube for those who couldn't attend. But let me make sure again, are there any specific questions that anyone has? Camilla, we haven't heard from you, or Cam, or Christian for that matter. Anybody? Final questions? All right,
Really quick, I do
Yes.
want to tell you, I don't think that it recorded 40 minutes of you.
I hope not, man. I mean,
It-
I'm looking up in the
it's-
corner and it says 1 hour and 10 minutes of recording. It's like,
Oh.
no, we don't hear that long.
It only says 40 minutes on my end.
Oh, for real? Okay.
Yeah, 37.
Well, that's about when I started it. So let's hope that's the case. I think on YouTube, if worst case scenario, I think I can crop some of it on or something. Oh, I always run into these issues. But I think we'll manage somehow. All right. Any other final questions, anybody? If not, thank you all, by the way, and I will see. And if you do have any other questions, please feel free to email me between now and Friday. All right. I will see y'all then.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank y'all. Bye.
Thank you.